the Welsh Affairs Select Committee. My name is Ruth Jones. I'm the Member of Parliament for Newport West and Islwyn and Chair of this committee. And today we're hearing from the leadership of S4C, and on behalf of the committee I'd like to say thank you so much for taking the time to appear in person before us and for all three of you coming along today. It's really, really helpful. Witnesses and members are all welcome to give their questions and answers in Welsh or English, and the translation can be heard by putting on the headphones. If anyone is having any technical difficulties, please indicate to the clerks and they'll come to sort you out. Let me move on and start first of all. Let me start by asking each of the members of the witnesses in front of us to perhaps introduce yourselves and indicate what your role is within S4C. Shall I start with Delyth Evans, please?
Good afternoon.
My name is Delyth Evans. I'm the chair of S4C, and I've been in post since May of last year, so 7 months.
And it's a delight to have you back in front of us. Thank you very much, Delyth. Geraint, please.
Evans, Chief Executive of S4C, and I've been in post as Chief Exec since the 1st of January 2025. Prior to that, I was already at S4C. I was interim Chief Exec for a time and also interim Chief Content Officer and originally Commissioner of News and Current Affairs at S4C.
Thank you, Geraint. Dyfrig, Davies, nice to meet you, and please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. I'm Dyfrig Davies. I'm a lead independent member of S4C. I also am on the board, of course, and prior to that, I ran a television company called Telescope in Swansea and also was the chair of TAC. I also now run 3 small companies, nothing to do with television, back in the Newcastle Emlyn area.
Thank you very much. Let me bring in Ben Lake, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. If I can make a start then and ask each of you in turn, please, just to express what you anticipate may be the challenges, the greatest challenges facing the challenge in the coming year. And maybe if you would also be willing to express how you anticipate the challenges that the channel faces compare perhaps to some of those that the other broadcasters may face. So if I'll start with you then, please, Delyth, and then we'll move on to Geraint and Dyfrig. I would say that the main challenge facing S4C, like all other public broadcasters, is how we fit into the current media landscape where there's so much competition from hundreds of other companies in Britain and beyond. When S4C was established, there were 4 channels. Now people are able to select from hundreds of different channels. So there is huge competition to attract people's attention, to draw in audiences. So the greatest challenge we face is how to attract an audience and retain the audience we have. And that is not only the most important thing, it is about creating content that people wish to see, but also the other question is the prominence of our content, how people see that content, and on what devices they use, and the different platforms that exist out there. So that's the greatest challenge as I see it. A challenge ahead of us now as well, of course, is the establishment of a secure financial future for S4C, and I'm sure we'll come on to discuss that later on. Thank you very much. Geraint. If I can pick up then on what Delyth said, it's about prominence. I think that's the big word for us. Without prominence, you can commission the content, the best content in the world, but if people are not able to see it or find it, then they're not going to be able to view it. So that prominence is really important. The Media Act is supposed to ensure appropriate prominence for S4C on smart TV in Wales, because as Delyth referred to those 4 channels, we may remember those 4 buttons on our televisions many years ago. You are now faced by a sea of apps when you go on to smart TV. So ensuring prominence for S4C on that smart TV of the future is vitally important for our traditional audience, but also to the new audience that we wish to discover S4C and to find us and to hear the Welsh language. The Act addresses this. We have just heard today that Ofcom have published a consultation on the draft code for prominence, and that's going to be now open until March, and we'll take the opportunity, as I'm sure yourselves will also, to provide evidence to that and suggest that public service broadcasters will be one of those 9 windows on the homepage of Smart TV that provides prominence for BBC, ITV, Channel 4, 5 and S4C as part of that. That's good to hear. But there are some concerns that we have in that regard as well, because there is a concern as to whether Ofcom will implement this in quite a meaty way to make sure that S4C gets the prominence. It might be okay to assume that BBC, ITV and Channel 4 will get the prominence, but is S4C going to get the same prominence? And it's a far more serious problem than simply the apps. It's more than just the apps. If you watch Smart TV now, you now know that you'll see content with pictures and images for contact. That's the out-of-app prominence that people are talking about. And there's a question as to whether there'll be a cost in ensuring that prominence outside the app and how people will be able to find S4C. So that's one quite substantial challenge, but that's for television. We've also heard Ofcom talking about the use of YouTube, which is increasingly a practice in our living rooms. And YouTube is the second most popular platform that people use in their living rooms. So the Act doesn't address the prominence of public service broadcasters on YouTube. So what power will Ofcom have to its elbow to be able to give prominence to S4C content? We're talking about this shift to digital. We want to appeal digitally to audiences on platforms like YouTube, but there's no purpose commissioning and spending on that content unless it can be found by young viewers. We were at Ofcom in London this morning while we are here to have that very conversation with them, and there seemed to be quite a lot of sympathy for S4C and other public service broadcasters. But again, the question will be, what power do they have to ensure that people like YouTube do provide prominence to S4C? And really, this, in essence, is what gets to the root of the importance of public service broadcasting, isn't it? The defence before for us was that we were one of the 4 main channels in the EPG, the Electronic Programme Guide, which meant that when you put the television on, you'd find us. And you'd find content, whether it's news, current affairs, things that are important for your communities. Well, without prominence, that disappears. And there's a concern then, what will influence people's practices and, about what's important in California rather than what's important in Carnarvon and Cardiff and so forth. So this prominence is important. There is some degree of legislation that supports us, but implementing it, I think, is what is needed and needs to be watched and carefully policed now. Dyfrig, of course, in relation to that, there are financial problems. Are we really being funded adequately? That's a question to face these challenges, prominence being one of them, of course, and also the importance of S4C to the economy of Wales. And I think I can't emphasise too much that for every £1 invested in S4C, it creates a value of £1.70 in return in the economy. And if you think about how many people are employed, so the importance is the importance of retaining those. That's a really important element for us. You think of certain areas where media plays a really important, very important role also, and this is something that we are very aware of, is that there's a need for us to retain and keep our standards and maintain those standards. There's all kinds of competition against us, of course, including things like creating content by individuals or by groups. And therefore, we have to ensure internally that our standards are very, very high. And it is something for us that we are giving a lot of attention to and question on a regular basis so that we can provide the best to everybody. S4C for all, that's our strategy. That is almost impossible, you may say, but that's the aim and that's where we wish to be. And so that means that we have to, in a way, with your support, invest in ensuring that that's the case and that it will be beneficial to the wider economy. Thank you. Thanks to all 3 of you. If I can turn to you now, Geraint. You touched there on the importance of digital and the new way that we are all now getting access to television and programmes and so forth. And indeed, in your 2025-2030 strategy, you emphasise the importance of this digitisation and the different platforms. Can I ask you first then, at a practical level, how have you seen that work start? You talked about YouTube, for example, social media, as well. I know that the channel is very strong on those. How have you seen this work start and how does this digital arena look, or how are you managing getting on at the moment? Yes, that's one of the reasons why we set about looking from scratch at the corporate strategy for S4C to face this very challenge. That's the name of the strategy, more than a television channel. S4C has to be more than a traditional TV channel. We need to be serving across platforms, and we're more than a TV channel because, as Dyfrig referred to now, we're an important employer. We are serving the whole length and breadth of Wales and skills and so forth. But back to your point, Ben, in terms of the digital service, this is not new. We have been taking steps along this pathway to become more digital for many years by now. And there's quite a lot of S4C content that already is digital. We're talking here about digital first very often. It includes our young people, things like Hansh. That's been digital first for some time because that's where that audience is included on our social media as well as on YouTube and so forth. And for me, there's a particular value to social media content. So if someone who perhaps doesn't hear the Welsh language in their lives and they happen across S4C content on TikTok or Instagram and it's 2 minutes long, that's really valuable because without that, the Welsh language might not be part of their lives at all from now on. So it's really special. Social media platforms are not a way of sending people over to watch the main predominant channel. It's content in itself. So that's one part of the strategy. When we turn then to things like drama, that's already digital first. You'll see that things like the Delyth, the Rough Cut series is now set up as a box set. So all the episodes are there from the moment the first episode is available because that's the practice of our audiences. We're responding to viewers' needs and we know that the demand is there for people to be able to see content when they want to see it. So that is a general pattern for our dramas. With Hansh, recently we commissioned a drama. It was a vertical drama, which is a drama filmed for your mobile phone, for TikTok. So it's been designed to look that way, not that way, like the traditional shape of a TV screen. So that's very popular with young people as well. And so that's another example of digital first. And some 5 or 6 years ago when I joined S4C, what we had in news was a television service, an evening news programme, S4C Newyddion, produced by BBC Cymru. But what we saw the need for, and the gap really in a way, was we were all receiving our news digitally. So where was the digital Welsh language news service for S4C Newyddion? And that's something that's been developed as an app, as a website, but also on TikTok and Instagram. And we see that young people are now receiving their news that they can have faith and trust in on their mobile phones that brings Newyddion S4C as part of the brand. And there are some 500,000 viewers for that every month. Sports are digital first. We show domestic matches from Super Rugby Cymru, the Cymru Premier, from the Women's League, and often on a Thursday evening or on weekends on the S4C digital platform, Click, iPlayer and YouTube, because there's only so much sports you can include on your main channel. I'm sure people would complain about there being too much sport, and we've heard that already, but the digital platform provides you an opportunity to provide the service for those people who really want it. So we can see that the practices are changing and therefore the strategy has to change. But it's not just about the genres. It's also about a way of thinking. And I think when we talk about commissioning digitally, we're talking about commissioning things that stand out. It's not just about the digital things being digital alone, those short things, but it's also about content, as perhaps some of you will have seen on S4C over the Christmas period now, a particular documentary called Scrutiny. And the viewing numbers went up to 5, 6, 7 times with the digital viewing. It was a particular documentary. People talked about it. It was available for all our viewers, and therefore people would turn to it as they wanted. So digital viewing and commissioning for digital does mean a number of different things. And the other thing I wanted to touch upon today, we've published this morning, and you may be aware of this, but we are going to be deepening our partnership with the BBC for iPlayer. We have, of course, our own player, S4C Click, and we've got a very loyal audience using that. But we see that many of our digital viewing, much of our digital viewing comes through the iPlayer, and there are reasons for this. iPlayer is a very familiar, common platform available on all smart TVs, and S4C Click is not at the moment. So in order to take advantage of that and also to appeal to an audience that perhaps is not a traditional S4C audience, we have invested with the BBC in ensuring that there are particularly new features and prominence for S4C content on BBC iPlayer. At the moment, it exists through what somebody calls a channel in itself. A walled garden is what it's called in English. We want to bring those walls down. We want to include S4C content out of the walled garden and bring it into the main home space. And that's what's going to happen in the new partnership. We're very pleased and proud of that publication today. And I'm sure there will be endless opportunities for the viewers as a result of that. And on that point then, Geraint, that's very exciting news. As an iPlayer user from Wales who's registered in Wales, in due course, then perhaps the mainstream might give more prominence to S4C content, perhaps automatically. Yes, certainly. There's a specific setup where there is a minimum of S4C, S4C titles that are going to appear on the main new and trending features. So it means hopefully that people, not only those people who look for it, but people will encounter it and find Welsh content and they will be able to view it. They'll also see that there's increasing personalisation happening, which means that if Mr. Ben Lake makes use of the iPlayer to watch S4C on a regular basis, then he will receive more S4C content fed to his homepage. And if somebody has children, in the past it was very difficult to find children's content on BBC iPlayer. By now, we have ensured in this new partnership that there is a prominent space that's going to be on the children's homepage next to CBeebies and CBBC, where Q and Stunch will also appear, and that'll be across the United Kingdom. So it's really good news, I think, for children's content that are very important for S4C as well. And that brings me on to the last question I was going to ask you, and that is this task of monitoring where your viewers are, where they're located, because I know of a number of people, school friends for many years who now perhaps have moved across Offansdyke and are very eager for their children, for example, to be able to watch Q and children's programmes in Welsh. With all this change that's happening in terms of people watching through YouTube or iPlayer and so forth, how easy is it to monitor, where your viewers are, how they get access to the programmes, and also associated with that? Then, do you feel that there is enough recognition of this change by the regulators, such as Ofcom, for example? Because it strikes me that you're doing a lot of work in ensuring that the viewers are able to get access to your programmes over these platforms. But it must cost quite a lot of money and require specific skills. And I'm interested in knowing if, is Ofcom, for example, does it recognise this change and this change of working? There are a number of questions there, Ben. I'll try and tackle them in turn if I can. In the first instance, we know from the information we received from Barb that measures television viewing figures, there's something like 100,000 viewers over Offansdyke watch S4C content every week, whereas some 300,000 may view in Wales. That's quite a regular pattern, and that's through the Barb measures alone. Through the digital platforms, it can be a little bit more difficult to measure the reach. For example, you can't say, are you repeating data if you look at the YouTube and iPlayer and click figures all together. So it's difficult to come to a total number of figures if you simply add them together. But we are very aware, that there is increasing viewing happening across the United Kingdom for things like children's content, for things like sports specifically as well. There's a major interest beyond Offansdyke in that. So we can see the growth there. In terms of Ofcom and its recognition of that, they very much welcomed the announcement this morning about the additional features on BBC iPlayer that will mean that Welsh language content is going to be more prominent for everybody. It does come with a cost, and sometimes there's a need to weigh up if something is worth the cost. When you look for prominence on smart TV in the future, there's something very boring called metadata that's going to lead people to content and make it discoverable. And that is something that means that you need people to feed that metadata in terms of wording and pictures into the information which then goes to these platforms. So there is a cost associated. This is a question we've already touched a little bit on cost, and I'm sure perhaps we'll come on to that again in discussing the Green Paper. But serving audiences across more and more platforms, I take it is important for all of us, but it brings with it an additional cost as well, of course, in terms of people and in terms of maintaining and sustaining platforms, and possibly in order to get prominence on smart TV platforms. So funding is needed to support that, if that's what we want to see public service broadcasting being able to continue to do. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. My question is to Dyfrig. You bring a lot of experience of working clearly within production companies, and our interest is in knowing what S4C's relationship is like with the production companies and how you think this may be possibly deepened and developed over time. Well, yes, I've crossed the border, if you like. Literally, I've gone from being a producer and running a company to working for S4C now on its board. So the first thing to say, of course, is that my role here is not to do with content at all. The whole operation remains, of course, with those who are employed. But I speak regularly with friends who run companies, and I feel that perhaps things sit better now than they have for a very long time, in the sense that at the end of the day, if you run a company, the problem you face is that you invest in ideas, and then the time it takes for those ideas either to get a yay or a nay. They're very familiar with me on the board saying that a quick no is better than perhaps, something else. So what we've worked on recently is following a commissioning process that is very, very clear, really, for the companies and indeed for S4C. At the end of the day, in S4C, we want the best ideas, the best possible ideas. That's what's going to attract viewers. That's what's going to give S4C its good reputation. So in order to ensure that, we have to look at a number of factors, including, the size of the company, what the company can do, and so forth. And all of that is important, very important work. And I think taking the companies on that journey with us and that they understand it clearly is important. One of the things that S4C does, of course, is it collaborates with TAC. I was the chair of TAC for 3 years, and the relationship was a good one. It's even better now. There was a joint conference run by TAC and S4C in order to be able to explain the process as we move forward. Also, at the moment, we're working on a content strategy, because very often what the companies want is to know where they may be in a year's time and in 2 years' time. And that's very difficult, isn't it? Of course, anticipating and projecting. The channel itself has to consider where we are going to be in 3 years' time in terms of our funding. How do you prepare in advance? And it's about collaboration, an open relationship of discussion. The process is one that works. The idea goes on a cloud, and that then is discussed, and there's a yes or a no or a perhaps or a development or further information required. So I think it's a much happier situation. Yes, my experience helps in the sense that I can remember what the frustrations that I felt were when I was a senior producer. But having said that, I've learned an awful lot as well. And it's not quite as simple as I had hoped it would be, to be honest with you. If I can add then to what Dyfrig says, clear and consistent communication is what it's about. Being straight, and as Dyfrig says, a quick no is better than somebody dragging a conversation out. Don't like saying no to people. But the Imagining the Future conference we had in Cardiff recently was really important, bringing the sector together to explain our vision in terms of the strategy, more than a TV channel, how that's going to be realised, what challenges we're facing and how we're going to tackle them. And Delyth, the chair, and I, and Leon, the chief content officer, also appeared before the annual meeting of TAC in order to answer any questions they had. And I feel that that is something that we'd like to see happening on an annual basis, so that they can ask us questions about any concerns they may have. So we are adopting that as a way of working within S4C now. We're transparent, we're open in all that we do, internally and externally with the sector. It also helps, I think, with the board we have now, there are 3 members, aren't there, who have a direct background of the broadcasting sector. And that strengthens the experience around the table. There are very important other skills as well, of course, but the fact that we've got that expertise on the board is really helpful in our decisions, I feel. Thank you.
For brief answers. Well, you're giving very comprehensive answers, but I'm conscious we've got a lot of topics we want to cover this afternoon. So please, don't worry. I'm sure you'll get to say everything you want, but if we could have briefer answers, that'd be really helpful. Thank you. Anne Davies, please.
Thank you very much. I'm so pleased to hear that you're collaborating with TAC. It's so vitally important. They're vital to the sector, aren't they? So can I just ask you, Delyth, if that's okay, what impact, or what do you anticipate the impact will be on the Welsh language as we look at digital diversification and the 2030 strategy that S4C has in moving forward? What do you see the impact being on the Welsh language, and how you'd like to see that changing? You know, you hope that it's going to improve, or how do you think it's going to pan out then? How do you see this working at the moment? The first thing to say is I think it's more vital today than it's ever been before because of that choice that exists out there for people to view. We know the children and young people spend an awful lot, perhaps too much of their time on screens. So it's really important that what they see includes Welsh language content. In terms of ages, what we offer for children is vital and key for the future of the Welsh language. That's obvious. An increasing number of children in our primary and secondary schools come from families where Welsh is not spoken at home. So it's vitally important that those children see Welsh language content on their TVs and on their screens, and that the Welsh language comes into the home situation so that the parents and the grandparents are able to view these programmes with them. I know that happens among friends of mine. So from that young age, that Welsh language content of very high standard that's produced is vitally important. As children grow older, there are so many other things they can be viewing. So I think it's vitally important that they feel that the Welsh language still is relatable to them and relevant to their lives outside of school, and that they can socialise in Welsh, on social media in Welsh and so forth. So the work that we do to target the young audiences as they, go through their teens is really vitally important. And then for the older age groups, so much of our offer appeals to different age groups. And we work very hard to give those audiences what they want, because the Welsh language is part of their lives and we want that to be reflected on screen. And then to echo that in terms of the language, one of the elements important to note are the services that we provide for learners as well. I think what we provide for learners on YouTube or on S4C is very specific to them. I think possibly we can do more, but I think S4C has an absolutely vital role in reaching the 2050, Cymraeg 2050 situation. And also we're very proud of the relationship we have with the National Centre for Learning Welsh, and we have regular dialogue with them about learners' needs as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. In recent evidence to the Culture, Media and Sport Committee recognised and identified that children and teenagers between ages 9 and 15 are increasingly underserved across the UK, and you've already touched on the importance and what you're doing about this, but do you have a strategy specifically in order to respond to this challenge to ensure that these young people have what they need and that they have it through the medium of Welsh? Yes, certainly. It's considered perhaps as a difficult age group to serve among many. I think we can be very proud that S4C does more than any other broadcaster in this arena, to be honest. Yes, we do things like Newyddion Ni, our news for children, to introduce them to news stories of the world around them. But one of the things we've seen quite a lot of interest in and quite a lot of success in is drama for children of this age. We get feedback from Welsh medium schools, but also from schools who teach Welsh as a second language, that these dramas can be very valuable for studying in the classroom. And we've been commissioning 1 or 2 dramas every year for this age group recently. And drama is expensive and difficult to fund. And sometimes when you weigh up the value of it, you look at the viewing figures. And the viewing figures for children are not going to reach the peak hours viewing figures. But I think it's an important investment for us to make. During the past year, we've commissioned a series called Corridor and Utopia for children. That's been very important, funded quite considerably through tax credits. Tax credits for children's content's been very useful, and using tax credits as a way of encouraging more specific production of this nature, as well as developing skills, really is a useful tool, I think. So I would like to see more of that happening. The tax credits we have are rapidly disappearing, so in order to continue to do this, there is a need for more of that. Some years ago, we commissioned other dramas. There was one called Bex and Golady that were funded through the Young Audience Content Fund that came through the Westminster government. That disappeared, and there's nothing comparable that's been put in its place. So this is an area that is under strain, really, in terms of serving it, and anything that can provide more funding towards serving a difficult-to-reach audience certainly is going to be welcomed. We also provide content by way of animations for children of this age. They mean things that we develop internally or jointly. We co-produce quite a lot, which brings additional value for that money, and that's with the Irish and T.G. Carhart as an Irish broadcaster. And there have been 2 animations recently produced by them, one called Molly that came out on S4C over Christmas, and one Liban. We are looking to fund more partnerships with them. So our animation is another area, and also sometimes we buy content. So there are purchases such as Shrek, for example, you may have seen, and Madagascar over Christmas on S4C, and also the very popular, even though it's not for me, Bluey. Not for me, but very, very popular in certain households, as I understand it. And again, when we're talking about digital viewing, we see astonishing digital viewing for Bluey over Christmas. So there are a number of different areas there for children. There are football format called Techers, bought by the Irish as a series they're eager to broadcast it on their channel. So I think it's quite numerous. It might surprise many, but S4C is the second biggest commissioner of children's content in the UK after the BBC, and we're very proud of that. Thank you.
And Davies, please.
Thank you very much. I must say, Bluey is a favourite of my youngest grandchildren, so well done, S4C. What about with Mangi? Well, you've got to sit there and watch it, haven't you? I have to watch it. So AI, of course, it's going on to something more serious. AI is becoming part of our everyday lives. What are the challenges and benefits for S4C looking at AI? And perhaps Geraint and Delyth and then Dyfrig to answer. Certainly, we have got to embrace the opportunities that AI brings. Artificial intelligence comes into most people's work by now, and it should, for its advantages and benefits. I think there are some things that need to be protected against. We need to protect that AI doesn't replace people. I think it's there to facilitate and to make people's work more effective. That's the use of it that we're looking for when we talk about AI, not to take people's jobs. So that's quite a common principle, I think, you'll see in S4C, and certainly perhaps from other public service broadcasters as well. We don't want AI to be taking away creativity from the process of creating content. It should be there to add to it in a way. We had an AI expert speaking into the senior leadership team in S4C last week, and he said really that almost everybody is trying to make the best possible use of AI. They think that everybody is doing more than they are, and that they may be behind the curve, and everybody's looking for those secrets that AI will be able to give by way of hints and tips. One of the fears we have is that the Welsh language may be left behind because of AI. These machines need to be taught in Welsh as well as in English, I think, and I think we are really eager, jointly with the Cymraeg 2050 department in Welsh Government, to look at the possibilities of introducing a way of teaching the machines through the medium of Welsh with the content that we have. We've got translation, interpretation, translating content for subtitles and so forth. There's something, there can be benefits to it by using AI. So S4C has got to play a totally central part in that, I think, so that AI in Welsh is available in Welsh as well as beneficial to other broadcasters. Nothing to add to that. I take on board the point the Chair makes, but to say that it's something that the board is taking a major interest in and wants to ensure that we really do take advantage of the opportunities that AI brings without it impacting jobs, so that it contributes to the value of people's jobs, not replacing them. Well, the genie's out of the bottle. We've got to manage it as well, haven't we? And that's the truth of the matter. So I won't add anything further. I would agree 100% with what's been said. The dangers are that it shouldn't retract from the creativity that people have, and, no job losses and so forth. But there is a positive use made of it as long as it is managed and regulated properly. My biggest fear, and perhaps this is quite personal, to be honest, is that you may lose, the people who create will lose the copyright, and I would never want to see that happening. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your brevity as well, much appreciated. Gerald Jones, please.
Thanks, Chair. Can I move us on to funding? We've got 2 years or thereabouts for the Royal Charter to sort of come to an end. And could we just sort of explore how confident are you that the next funding arrangement will be adequate to meet S4C's needs? And in those discussions, sort of forthcoming, what opportunities are there for you to input into those funding discussions that you're aware of to date?
Well, we are obviously focusing very clearly on the Green Paper that's been announced and the consultation period that's coming up. S4C will put in a formal response to the Green Paper, obviously, in the course of that. We very much welcome what has been mentioned in the Green Paper about S4C because we feel that very careful consideration has been given to the importance of S4C as an independent public service broadcaster in Wales, and that is woven throughout the document, as well as a commitment to maintain sufficient funding for S4C going forward. And I know this is something that this committee has argued very strongly in favour of in past reports that you've done, which we value very much, obviously. So the commitment is there to provide sustainable funding for S4C. That's explicit in the Green Paper. What we're very keen to see is that is also contained very explicitly in the White Paper, so that S4C's funding is secure and sustainable for the future, and that it is a sufficient level of funding to enable us to carry out what we think is incredibly important for the culture and the Welsh language in Wales, and that there is enough funding to support the future developments that we need to make in order to stay relevant in the digital media environment. So that's something that we're going to be expecting to see in the White Paper. It's also important to us that that is protected against any changes that might come in the licence fee, because if there is a reduction in the licence fee, which is something that is explicitly predicted in the Green Paper, we think it's incredibly important that S4C does not suffer as a consequence of that, so that any new funding arrangement, any new framework protects S4C funding. That's very important to us. But just to repeat, we very much welcomed the consideration given to S4C and the recognition of the work that S4C and all of the production companies associated with S4C do, both for Welsh culture and for the Welsh economy.
And if I could just add to what Delyth has said, in terms of our relationship with DCMS and opportunities to contribute, I think that the Green Paper is a reflection of the positive dialogue we do have with DCMS officials. I think there's good recognition of S4C and our needs in the Green Paper. And I think to emphasise what we're looking for in terms of being able to plan effectively for the future of S4C is that the funding is sufficient, and good to see that commitment there from the Secretary of State to that which is in the Communications Act 2003, that it's predictable, that is that we can plan ahead, because things like rights for sport and drama and so on, you need some visibility of future funding to be able to do that effectively, and that it's sustainable. And that's the big question with the licence fee as to whether it's sustainable with fewer people paying, but we hope that S4C will be protected in that. And as to how much funding we'll need going forward, I mean, that is the big question, because I think we need to work together here in defining what's expected of S4C as a public service broadcaster. That is, if we are to serve all of these audiences on different platforms and so on, then it's quite likely that we'll be making the case for further funding, but that's something that's to come. I think it's a two-phase approach to this. Initially, it's responding to the Green Paper as it is, which happens by mid-March, and then after that we'll be making our submission to DCMS as to the level of funding required for S4C to be able to continue doing what it does, in all areas such as news, sport and so on, to serve all the audiences effectively and to be a catalyst for economic growth in Wales.
Thanks very much. I mean, obviously, building on that, it's that sort of solid platform that you need. Are there any sort of opportunities that you explore in terms of alternative funding to that's funded through the UK government? And obviously you mentioned the Green Paper and talking about alternative options to the licence fee. Are there any that you consider would be sort of worthwhile exploring sort of going forward?
From reading the Green Paper, it seems that anything which doesn't involve some element of licence fee is off the table. I mean, we've seen other PSBs across Europe, in Scandinavia and in France and in Germany, adopt other models, some based on general taxation, which is ring-fenced, for broadcasting, others being a household levy. But it seems that that's not part of the consideration for this Green Paper consultation. So for us, we are most definitely looking at other ways of funding. We already supplement what's coming from the public purse commercially with advertising. There's advertising on S4C. But what we've seen with advertising as linear viewing figures decline is that the income from advertising for all broadcasters has diminished. And that's not been offset by any growth in digital advertising as yet, and that's not likely to happen. So we have to be realistic as to how much income could be generated from advertising. We do have a commercial board, Dyfrig is a member of, and we are looking at investment. And we're also looking at, again, I mentioned earlier, co-production as a means of bringing other alternative funding into the pot so that you're producing more effectively. But we have to be realistic as to how much funding would come from any commercial sources for S4C.
And if I could add what we're looking at, for example, with advertising, because obviously the competition when you get to advertising is huge, and why would people want to advertise maybe when the way that our viewing figures are collected by Barb, are unfair in the sense that the sample isn't big enough, it's not giving a true picture, and therefore we are suffering because of that. But the thing is, we are looking at, as the commercial board, to see looking at hyper-local advertising as one method of bringing more money in, and sponsorship for programmes. But of course, it's hard work, but it is being done. But we do need to do more work on that. That is something which definitely, I would agree with you that we do need to look at other ways of funding. But it's difficult. I can't see that taking over then, if that's the point.
And one specific question in the Green Paper relating to the BBC and advertising is whether the BBC should be allowed to carry advertising. And I think the concern that everybody would have amongst the other PSBs is that's likely to take funds away from the overall pot. So it would affect on the advertising income that ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5 and S4C would be able to generate as a result. So that would be a concern.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Geraint. And you've highlighted the funding issues that are coming your way, as with other public service broadcasters. I just wondered, do you have any other thoughts about alternative funding streams, or you mentioned funding streams that have dried up or whatever? Are there any other funding streams or partnerships or relationships that you might like to develop in the future going forward? Obviously there aren't trade secrets, but that you could share with the committee maybe. I don't know, Delyth, if you've got any thoughts there.
There's quite a strong emphasis in the Green Paper on partnerships and collaborations that the BBC is encouraged to develop. We've got a very good relationship already with the BBC in Wales. Very, very close working, both on the technology behind the broadcasting, but also in programme making. And that's very, very important to us. But we're always looking for new collaborations with other countries. There's a very good relationship with the Irish broadcaster, and so that's something that the drama crew, but the drama commissioners particularly are looking at, because obviously to get more value for what we produce from the public purse, working closely with other producers and distributors is really important to get really good content for our drama, which is very popular and very well received. So collaboration and partnership is something that we are focusing on.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, and Delyth mentioned our relationship with BBC Cymru, which is a good relationship. There have been some cost-saving exercises introduced already, such as our co-location at Central Square in Cardiff, the fact that the transmission is now a joint transmission operation for BBC Wales and for S4C. But this iPlayer relationship, which was announced today, we hope will land very well with the Secretary of State, who did suggest that in order to confront the threat that we face, with the streaming giants, we need to come together as PSBs to collaborate. And I think two licence fee funded broadcasters coming together in this way shows that if we do work together, then we can be far more effective.
Yeah, Absolutely. Let me ask Delyth specifically. When you first came into this role, you wanted to have an open relationship with government and politicians. Do you think that that they are open? Is there any way you would like to change anything with your relationship with government or politicians at all?
I think I've been very pleasantly surprised by the level of support S4C receives across parties, and I think that's something that's very important to us. We work hard to maintain that relationship, but politicians, across the board are very supportive, and I'm very pleased at the recognition there is of the importance of what we do and the impact that we have, particularly in some of our less deprived communities where those, media, communications, creative industries jobs are just so valuable. Places like Llanelli, Carmarthen, North Wales, Carnarvon, places like that. So there's a real understanding amongst politicians across the board as to the value of S4C to the creative economy. With the government in particular, we have good relations. The Minister for the Creative Industries at the time came to see us last year. We had a visit in Geraint, which was very good to have. And the new Minister, who was not long ago appointed, we've got a visit organised for later on. And the Secretary of State is hoping to come as well. So we have a good relationship at that level. With the department, there's very regular meetings with departmental officials, and as we've mentioned earlier, in terms of our input into the Green Paper and the understanding of S4C roles, we feel that's a very good relationship. It's also worth saying that we have a very good relationship with the ministers, with government in Wales and the Senedd. So, we feel very fortunate in having the level of support that we do, and I feel happy with the strength of those relationships.
That's good to hear. Thank you very much. Let me pass on to Ben Lake, please.
Diolch. Thank you, Chair. I give an opportunity for people to put their headphones on. So very quickly, Geraint, can I just ask you briefly, you talked about the cost of having those sports broadcasting rights, and it's something I know this committee in the past has taken an interest in. How has the collaboration between the public service broadcasters worked? If I'm right, I think there's been lots of collaboration in the past in terms of the Six Nations, for example. Is that ongoing, and is it possible that there'll be further collaboration in sport in the future in order to ensure that there is more free broadcasting, for example, for things like football, rugby and so forth? Yes, absolutely. And we have noted the committee's interest in sports, and we know that you're doing that because you're concerned about what's available to our viewers at home. You want the national teams, particularly, competing at the high level platforms seen. At the moment, S4C has been fortunate through the hard work of the Sports Commissioner, who has ensured the rights for football matches, all of Wales men's football matches. We've also some for the women's, and it was brilliant that we as a broadcaster were able to show all the women's matches in the Euros in Switzerland earlier last year. For rugby, the Six Nations is something that is in place by now, so it's going to be on BBC ITV and available in Welsh on S4C. And the one other competition is a new competition called the Nations Competition, which are the summer and autumn matches they used to be known. And I don't want to say too much today, but I think I may be quite safe in saying that I'm confident that we will get the rights for those as well for the men's international rugby matches up until 2028-29. So what that means is that the men's international matches will all be available, and the only place they will all be available is on S4C from now until 2029. Great. Well, that is very good news, and thanks very much for sharing that. If I can now perhaps change the subject a little bit and ask you, Delyth, one of the things when you first came before this committee several months ago now was that you mentioned that one of your main objectives, or one of your first objectives would be to build a strong relationship with the board and ensure that everybody worked as a team. And very simply, my question is, how are things going? Yes. Thank you, and I'll take the opportunity to thank you for your support at the time of my appointment, fully worthy. It was very important at the time. I feel that things are going very well at a board level. Creating strong governance was a priority for me, and of course it continues to be so. As I said earlier, we have very strong skills around the board now, including skills from the production sector, and that's a big help to us. And I feel that we are collaborating effectively. The shift from the previous way of governance, where you had an authority, to being a unitary board, is quite a major change. And that is really important in terms of how we all work together. And I think that it's fair to say that that is working well. There is a level of scrutiny and challenge that's very important. But I feel that everybody has an important contribution to make. Everyone brings something different to the table, to the board. It's worth noting that 2 current members of the board are stepping down in the coming months, so we will be looking for new members for the board. And of course, that's an important step, and we're looking specifically for people with expertise in digital because of the environment in which we're currently working, and also we will need somebody who has legal skills, so we will be looking for those skill sets. But I think we have around the table now a very effective team who are committed to the future of S4C, who understand the challenges. So I'm happy with the way forward and how that's gone. It's been a busy time. I have a lot to learn, and we all, as a new team around the board, have a lot to learn. But I'm very happy with the way things are going at the moment. Thank you. Great, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Ben, great. Let me ask Dyfrig, and it's a difficult question because obviously they're in the room, but I just wondered how you would describe the relationship between the Chief Exec and the Chair of the Board, because obviously in the past we've interviewed previous people, and can I say the relationships were interesting. So I just wondered how you would describe their relationship now.
Well, yes, I mean, I'd say it's a very good relationship in the sense that there's trust and mutual respect, which I think is the starting point. But it's true to say that we are, as the board and the chair, we are always willing to challenge the executive. Geraint, of course, as the chief executive, no problems there at all. But I think because of the mutual respect, it works well. Now, my role as the lead independent member is to listen out for problems. And really, I haven't got a job unless there are problems, but I'm not looking for problems. But I am listening out. And, of course, it's not just regarding the partnership here, because I think the partnership here works well at the moment, no problems at all. It's being aware of anything that changes that could affect that. We do not want to go back to places we've been before if we can avoid that as much as possible. So my job is to have my ears open and to listen to that. But I do feel that there is a strong purpose and we're aiming for the same goals. And, obviously, the pace that we have to change things, we're always going to challenge each other. Otherwise, it's not going to be effective. But I would say that, there is trust, mutual respect and effectiveness across the board at the moment.
Thank you. That's good to hear. Let me move on to Llynnos Medi, please.
Thank you. This is for you as well, Delyth. Following on from what Ben asked you earlier, you mentioned when you were with us last time here about the need for this change of culture. And it's easy to say it, but it's far more difficult to implement it, isn't it? So the question for you is, do you feel that you've been able to influence the culture? And can you see that the culture is changing from what we hear? It sounds as if it is. And how do you think at the long-term basis that you're going to be able to continue with that change and keep it going? I think there's something that can be done at a practical level in terms of understanding what goes on internally and how staff feel around the organisation, and are we hearing enough about any concerns that arise. And one of the things I did when I started as chair was to have regular meetings with different teams within S4C. Legal teams, commercial teams and so forth, just to understand how they saw things and also to ask them if they felt confident, if a problem were to arise, that they would know who to approach with their problem. So I have been having those conversations on a regular basis with members of staff. And I hear people saying things like, it feels like a very different place to work to what it did before. And of course, that is something I'm very pleased to hear. Also, being visible in the offices is very important, that people can see coming around the place. They can come up and say hello and have a conversation. And that is something that I felt is important and is something I do on a weekly basis. So my feeling is that S4C is in a good position in terms of the internal culture. There's an awful lot of good work that has happened at the operational level, and that work continues. In terms of the board, we are very alert to this question. It's very important to us. And the human resources team comes to give presentations to our board meetings and is coming again in March to give us an update on the work that's going on. But I think we are confident that things are moving in the right direction and that people are happy to work in S4C and they're proud of their contribution and they are committed. And that is to be welcomed and is vitally important to the work that we do. And it's ensuring that we make good use of public money, of course. Of course, to add to that, Carwyn Donovan from Beck too, of course, has been keeping an eye. He's come in when the problems began and he worked with the staff, and we had a report in the last board meeting from him that confirmed what Delyth has just said, to be honest, that we are moving on the right track here and that people feel much happier and that we can say, of course, there have been pulse reviews undertaken as well that shows that it's a good place to work, that people are far happier now. And we have to be alert to anything, of course, still. Thank you.
Nice. And obviously it's good to hear that people are happy to come to work and the atmosphere is different to how it used to be. The previous chair talked, when we questioned about HR policies and procedures, there was an absence of knowledge there. So I'm just wondering, in terms of like the Chief Exec and Geraint, HR going forward, staff are aware of policies, are they? Or, how do you ensure that staff actually get to know about these things?
Yeah, we've done a lot of work on our culture internally. We now have a director of people and culture rather than HR, because it is about people and culture. And that's quite a change, and that's been quite transformational. We've conducted a process where we've included everybody in some training around culture. We've embedded new values at S4C, which really encourage people to celebrate their successes, to respect each other, and to be ambitious and to go for it as well, but in a very respectful way. And that's been embedded across the staff. And that's not just a one-off event. It's something we've revisited again now, as we have somebody coming in as an external consultant to hold these sessions with staff, and they're still ongoing. So that's led to a greater awareness, I think, of the importance of culture. As to the question as to how aware they are, the recent Pulse survey that Dyfrig related to there showed that 95% of staff are aware of things like the Respect at Work policy, which I think is a fantastic result. So the awareness is most definitely there. And having somebody like Carwyn Donovan, who is the Beck 2 officer for Wales, coming into the board meeting and saying that he's seen an organisation which has been transformed, and the words he described to me recently was that we were an exemplary employer, is very good to hear. Beck 2 don't represent all our staff, but a significant proportion. So it's good to hear that from the union. So I think steps have been taken in the right direction. We shouldn't rest on our laurels. It's always something that needs attention. But I think we're in a far more comfortable place. And I think that staff should be able to complain. And staff have complained in the past year, which may seem an odd thing to say, but that's a good thing, because they know that they can, that it will be dealt with appropriately, and that people will be dealt with fairness.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Thank you, Geraint. Delyth, when you first came in, you talked about your desire to introduce sort of whistleblowing procedures and things to enable people to report anything they may be concerned about. How have you got on with doing that? Obviously, it's good to hear about the Pulse questionnaire responses, and also the fact that union involvement is there. But have you managed to introduce sort of whistleblowing procedures as well?
When we looked at this, what we found was that the procedures that we had that were in place previously covered all of the issues that they needed to cover. The problem was that people either weren't aware of them or using those processes properly, or the whistleblowing procedures weren't the right way to carry forward some of the concerns that people had, because they didn't meet the necessary criteria for a whistleblowing procedure to be taken forward. So I think we're confident that we do have the right procedures in place. What's important to me, that people within the organisation have the confidence to know where they should go if they have a concern. And when I've asked people about that, as I have in all of the meetings that I've been having, people say that they do feel that. You know, one of the problems previously was people didn't feel confident to take a concern forward, or that it wasn't being listened to. That isn't the case now. I think people feel that they know where to go, and if the sort of former process didn't work, that they would have another way forward. So I feel confident that that's the right structure that we have in place now.
And when we were appointed, there was an induction introducing us to all the policies, which has been good, obviously, from the board point of view. And, therefore, the staff know, that the board know, and the board, that as an authority, we can actually help then. So I think that's important. It's you can say that it's been spread throughout the whole of the company.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dyfrig. Let me hand over to Anne Davies, please.
Thank you. So, touching there on things that have happened in the past, and it's really lovely to hear that things have moved forward and improved. Let's look forward now then to the future of broadcasting in Wales. And in seeing S4C programmes having a far more prominent position on Netflix, for example, and Sky, can you, Geraint, perhaps reflect on your collaboration with these? Is there scope for us also? We know there are companies like Disney, Amazon Prime, and I don't know what all of the others are actually, but is it that direction that you'd like to see Welsh broadcasting moving in, and, perhaps having some agreement with S4C as they move forward? There have been some opportunities that have arisen. I would say that this is the future. The first series of Delyth, Rough Cut, was on Netflix. That was the first Welsh medium drama to be on Netflix. But I'm not confident that that is the future either. We want people to be involved in Welsh medium content wherever they are, of course. But budgets for, say, co-production with Sky or Amazon or Disney or Netflix, their budgets are at a level we will never reach, really. So we've got to be realistic about that. For me, people have also said to me that there should be more than one channel for us here in Wales, because S4C has got to BBC 1, 2, 3, Channel 4 and 5 all together. And that's true, of course. But I don't think that there should be more than one channel. I think what we need to do is make sure that we strengthen the S4C brand. S4C stands for something, and it stands for being more than a TV channel. It stands for the best place for us to have content in Welsh. And our work, I think, is to get that content out on the most appropriate platforms. People have asked me in the past why we spend money on content for YouTube when it could be spent on content on S4C. Well, because there is an audience there. And when S4C was established, in a way, television was the way forward for the Welsh language, because that was the popular medium at the time. But for me now, the battle for the Welsh language is a battle at several fronts, and we've got to fight that on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, as well as on the streaming platforms that we have, by using tools such as Click and iPlayer to reach new audiences. So, yes, the objective is there to reach new audiences, is there all the time, but the S4C brand is the thing that unites all of that and pulls it together. And I feel that the financial support for us to be able to go out there and continue to commission the highest standard content, because standard is important. And when people hear about things that are of high quality, they're going to go look for it. So being able to continue to commission the highest quality standard and get it out there on those platforms, that's the future for me. Talking about the future as well, and perhaps I'll look at three of you, but I may leave you to last, Delyth, as the chair of the board, to have the last word. So Dyfrig, Geraint, and then you, Delyth. What is the future of television in Wales? What does that look like? That's a question at half, isn't it? Linear television is disappearing. We will be viewing on different kinds of platforms. We know that, don't we? So the best content, a diversity and variety of content. The problem, perhaps, that we face really is ensuring that people know about the content, that marketing is more important now than ever. If I can turn the question on its head, so to speak, where would we be without S4C? Where would broadcasting in Welsh have been without it? And it wouldn't have been. It would have been swallowed up. You know, we wouldn't be in the position we are in. We are in a difficult situation, but there is a strength, and more than anything else, I think there is a desire and an appetite for this to work. It does mean that we have to face these huge challenges. Funding is number one. Prominence, of course, you know, we are tackling that. And thirdly, also, of course, I think marketing the content for the right cohorts of people, you know, where they can get access to it. That includes the people who approach the Welsh language perhaps for the first time, the new audience, but we must never forget the core audience. Thank you, Dyfrig. Thank you, Anne. For me, I think we have a very prosperous future ahead of us. I think that there is amazing creativity in Wales. I think we've got a production sector that's very strong, that's really eager to create content in Welsh. And many of us have put our careers into production or commissioning content in Welsh because the Welsh language is important to us. Many whom perhaps may have been able to go to work wherever they wanted, but chose to work in Wales for Wales, really. And I'm very proud of the sector that we have in S4C. So we can be confident in the talent we have. Finance is needed, I think, to support that in order for us to ensure that the standard is there and in order for us to be able to continue to be more than a TV channel, because we don't get this funding only to produce content. Through that, there is economic prosperity that comes to all sectors of Wales, to all corners of Wales. I see here, Llynos Medi here from Ynys Môn, the Studio Arian there, the work undertaken by Round Around there for the past 30 years. There's a lot to celebrate in all parts of Wales. Tinopolis in West Wales and small companies as well in Yr Egin, such as Carlam, as well as the hub in Cardiff. So S4C is an economic catalyst that is also vitally important. So I think you put all of those things together and I think we have a prosperous future. But what we need, you know, from politicians as well, is that support to ensure that we have that necessary prominence so that people know about us. We'll do our work. We commission high-quality content. We will use the social media platforms and the marketing methods and communications to get those messages out there. But it's that support, that prominence is going to be there for public service broadcasting in Welsh, for public service broadcasting in its entirety. It's important for the future of our nation, really, in a way that people are aware of what's going on in their world, but particularly in terms of the future of the Welsh language, that it's there for S4C as well. Thank you. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And all I would add is that we feel that S4C has a central role in this, in safeguarding the future of broadcasting in Wales and in ensuring that we are in a situation and a position where we can create content and programmes of the highest standard. We know that the talent and the creativity exist out there. So it's our place to set out the strategy and the vision and then support across Wales to create that content in the sector. So it's going to look very different to how it looks today, because there will be an increasing move towards digital and towards different platforms. So the content is going to look different and far more diverse than it currently does. But we will maintain that high standard we have, and we will make sure that we meet the needs of all our audiences, and S4C will be really at the centre of driving that vision. I'm confident of the future. Thank you.
Let me say on a personal note as well, I just want to say thank you so much for your televising of the Six Nations and the football, especially the women's football. As a Welsh learner, it's a great way to sort of learn but also enjoy the sport, and your commentary is always consistent, so that's really, really helpful. Thank you. But I just wanted, we've got a little bit of time, so I just wanted one question for each of you, just looking forward to the next 12 months, and it's great to be able to look forward rather than review. Let's look forward and think in terms of, if in your current roles, what's the one priority you want to be going forward with in the next 12 months? Just one. If I start with Geraint and then come to Dyfrig and then come to Delyth.
I don't want to repeat myself too much, but it is about securing prominence for S4C. I think there's a lot of work that we need to do with stakeholders to build that case and to secure future funding. Sorry, that's my second. And to secure future funding for S4C so that we can plan effectively for the future. I mean, if we think that Welsh language broadcasting and public service broadcasting is important, then I think it should be supported sufficiently so that we can generate even more wealth around Wales as a result of that. And just one final thing, I think we just need to be bold and innovative and be prepared to change. It's not about staying where we are now. It is about looking to the future. The future is going to be quite different. It already is. But all of our audiences are consuming their content digitally, and we shouldn't be afraid about that. We should be embracing it.
Yeah, thank you. Dyfrig.
Well, he's taken most of the points, actually. But no, to ensure the culture within S4C and the working with the sector, our stakeholders, continues to improve and continues to be flourishing. It's that simple. And I will also say that, yes, we're looking forward to challenging the executive to make sure that things do work in that way, that we do have, again, as we do have, an S4C that we are so proud of, that does a fantastic job.
The one thing that I would focus on above all is charter review, because that is what's going to set out S4C's and safeguard S4C's future. So we need to make the case as efficiently as we can, as effectively as we can, about the value of S4C, both to Welsh culture and to the Welsh economy, and to ensure that the white paper gives sufficient protection and guarantees for secure funding future going forward. And obviously this is something that you as members of Parliament are going to be spending a lot of time looking at, and we very much welcome the support that you've given us up till now, and hope that we can maintain that for the future, because that's about how we continue to deliver what we want to do for the period ahead.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. I want to thank all three of the witnesses for coming in today, Delyth Evans, Geraint Evans and Dyfrig Davies. Thank you so much for appearing in person before us today. And I also need to thank our interpreter, Nerys. Thank you so much. I always forget to thank the interpreter. Diolch yn fawr iawn. And I will now bring today's session to a close. Order, order. Thank you very much. Very helpful.
Thank you.